imagine for a second that you're standing in the middle of this multi-billion-dollar luxury shopping district.
Right.
You're just surrounded by these sweeping glass facades, hyper-modern architecture everywhere. Everyone walking by is wearing this cutting-edge, breathable streetwear.
Yeah, the whole vibe is just
Yeah,
incredibly sleek.
exactly. But now, imagine that just a few decades ago, standing in that exact same spot, you would have been like literally knee-deep in mud on a dirt-covered nutmeg plantation.
Hard to even picture it.
It really is. But today we're exploring what I can only call the ultimate geographical magic trick. So welcome to our custom-tailored deep dive. Today we're looking at the cultural, historical, and really the sensory landscape of Singapore.
Yeah, and it is just a remarkable case study. I mean, when we looked at the source material on Singapore, we're looking at an island city-state where Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Western cultures all intersect.
Right.
But what makes it so unique isn't just the diversity, it's the sheer velocity of its evolution.
Exactly. And I mean, that's really our mission today, to uncover the underlying mechanism of that evolution. Because we're looking at a place that, honestly, mastered the art of radical reinvention.
Oh, absolutely.
They completely rewrote their physical and historical identity, and they did it in the span of a single human lifetime, like the ultimate before and after photo.
Yeah, the ultimate glow up.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. To understand how they actually did it, we have to look at the ground beneath their feet.
Mm.
There's this stretch in Singapore called Orchard Road.
Mm.
And today, it's this 2.2-kilometer long global retail icon.
It is. And we are talking about the absolute highest concentration of globalized consumption you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
You have these massive mega malls like Ion Orchard and NGN City. And they serve as this runway for top-tier luxury brands, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, intersecting with really high-end tropical fashion.
Right. But what absolutely blows my mind is the origin story here, because we have this runway of the future, right? But the name, Orchard Road, it's not some clever marketing spin.
No, not at all.
In the 1800s, this area was entirely agricultural. It was literally pepper, fruit, and nutmeg plantations, thus the orchard.
Right, exactly.
And then, during the Japanese occupation in World War II, the area was just heavily devastated. So my question is, how do you get from a devastated farming strip to a hyper-modern luxury boulevard?
Yeah, it's a massive leap.
Right,
Yeah.
it skips the awkward industrialization phase completely. We see this rapid transformation in the 1970s and 80s, but I mean, what was the actual mechanism there? How does a society engineer that kind of cultural whiplash without just falling apart?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it wasn't just, some natural byproduct of a booming economy. It was a deliberate, highly engineered strategy.
Okay.
Think of Singapore's urban planning, less like a traditional city that sort of grows organically over centuries, and more
Like a
like,
computer operating system or something.
exactly, like an OS.
Hmm.
When a newly independent Singapore looked at its post-war, post-colonial reality in the late 1960s, they realized pretty quickly that they had zero natural resources.
Wow.
Yeah, no oil, no vast agricultural plains. So their only path to survival was to become basically indispensable to the global economy.
So Orchard Road was essentially them updating their hardware to attract foreign capital.
Exactly that. By zoning Orchard Road specifically to become this concentrated, high-density commercial magnet, they were projecting an image.
An image of stability.
Right. Undeniable first-world stability. They were signaling to global investors that, hey, Singapore is a safe, luxurious, orderly place to park your money.
That makes total sense.
But to your question about how they managed the cultural whiplash, they did it by integrating the past into this new hardware, rather than just paving over it completely.
Oh, right. I actually noticed that in the research. The greenery in that area is incredibly prominent.
Yeah.
Like, you have these massive palm trees and rain trees just lining the concrete, and the nearby Singapore Botanic Gardens, plus their national flower, right? The Vanda Miss Joaquim orchid.
Yes.
It's all just woven right into the urban design.
And that is a very specific type of psychological messaging.
Really? How so?
Well, by maintaining and honestly tightly curating that tropical greenery, Singapore proves that they are in absolute control of their landscape.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, they take the unruly, aggressive, tropical environment of the equator and they just manicure it into luxury. So it is nature, sure, but it is highly regulated nature.
Manicured nature, which honestly perfectly transitions us to their next massive engineering feat. Because, well, when you run out of soil to manicure, you have to look somewhere else.
Right, you look to the water.
Exactly. They turn their attention to the water.
And the aquatic transformation of Singapore is really where the sheer scale of their ambition comes into focus.
It's unbelievable.
It is. Let's look at two critical areas here. Clark Quay, Marina Bay.
Yeah, let's start with Clark Quay, because historically this was a trading port named after some 1800s British governor.
Right.
And it was incredibly gritty. Like, you had colonial ships, raw materials, tin, spices, and immense industrial runoff. The Singapore River effectively became an ecological dead zone.
Oh, it was severely polluted. Just a mess.
But then, between 1977 and 1987, the government basically decided, we're going to fix it. And today, it's this vibrant entertainment hub.
Yeah, it's totally different.
You walk by the river and you hear EDM and live music echoing over the water. The river reflects all the neon from these restored pastel shophouses.
It's beautiful.
And you might even see families of real wild otters swimming in the river.
Oh, yeah.
Which is wild to me. But, I mean, how did they actually do that? You don't just, like, ask politely to clean up an entire dead river.
No, you definitely don't. The mechanism behind that 10-year cleanup was a massive, uncompromising reorganization of human life.
Reorganization.
Yeah, it wasn't just about skimming trash off the surface of the water. The government literally physically relocated thousands of street hawkers and squatters who were living along the riverbanks.
Wow, just move them entirely.
Moved them into new public housing. They also moved massive polluting pig farms out of the catchment areas.
I can't even imagine the logistics of that.
It was huge. They had to aggressively dredge decades of toxic heavy metal sludge from the riverbed. And then they installed entirely new underground sewage infrastructure.
So it was just this exercise in immense state capacity.
And policy enforcement, exactly.
That is just staggering. And yet Clark Quay is honestly just the warm-up act for Marina Bay.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you see a postcard of Singapore today, you're usually looking at Marina Bay. You see the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, which, if you haven't seen it, looks like a giant futuristic cruise ship resting on top of 3 skyscrapers.
That's iconic.
You see the Art Science Museum, the Helix Bridge, the Merlion, the New Year's fireworks happen there.
Yeah.
But the craziest detail from our sources.
That it didn't exist.
Yes. A massive chunk of this area literally didn't exist 50 years ago. They built it directly from the sea.
Yes, through really extensive land reclamation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Singapore's total land area has grown by roughly 25% since its independence.
25%?
Yeah.
Okay, but how does that actually work mechanically? Because you don't just, like, dump some dirt in the ocean and build a skyscraper on it.
No, it's an incredibly complex engineering process. Basically, you build a containment wall out in the open water, usually using these massive steel or concrete pylons driven deep into the seabed.
Okay.
Then you pump out the seawater from that enclosed area, and you pump in millions of tons of imported sand to fill the void.
Millions of tons of sand.
Millions. And then you have to compress it, squeeze all the residual moisture out of the underlying clay, and just let it settle before it can bear the immense structural load of, a global financial hub.
Okay, that is an absolute marvel of engineering. But I'm going to play devil's advocate and stay a little skeptical for a second here.
Sure.
When you take a gritty, historically functional trading port, you relocate thousands of people, dredge the river, and then conjure a pristine financial district out of the literal ocean. Isn't there a massive risk there?
Risk in what sense?
Like, doesn't a society risk washing away its actual soul when they sanitize it to that extreme and turn it into a tourist hub? Do you lose what made it real?
Well, what's fascinating here is how we actually choose to define a city's soul.
Okay.
Because in a lot of Western urban narratives, we tend to romanticize grit, right?
That's true.
We equate struggle and decay with authenticity. But if you look at the philosophy underlying Marina Bay, there's a totally different paradigm at play. The source material points this out really well. The soul of Singapore isn't rooted in preserving the dirt of a colonial trading port.
Right.
The soul is the ambition itself, this transformation from water to land to city to identity. Marina Bay is the physical embodiment of a society deciding to become more than what geography handed them.
Oh, I see.
Their national motto is Majula Singapura, which translates to Onward Singapore, that relentless forward motion that is the soul.
Onward Singapore. I hear that. But, ambition is great for a GDP chart. What about the older generations?
Yeah, the human cost.
Right. The people whose livelihoods were tied to that gritty river, the hawkers, the dock workers. You can't tell me they were thrilled to see their history paved over for a shiny tourist hub. Doesn't that alienate the people who built the foundation?
It does raise an important question, and honestly, it's the exact tension at the heart of Singapore's story.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a profound sense of dislocation for older generations,
Mm.
moving from these informal, vibrant river settlements into structured, high-rise public housing. That was a traumatic cultural shift for many people.
I can imagine.
But the government's calculation in the 1960s and 70s was brutal, but simple.
Hmm?
Nostalgia is a luxury that a poor, resource-starved island just cannot afford.
Wow. Nostalgia is a luxury.
Exactly. They basically traded historical preservation for economic survival and housing security.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because Marina Bay proves they could overcome the physical constraints of their geography, right?
Right.
But their next massive transformation proves they could overcome something much, much harder, the psychological constraints of their history.
You're referring to Sentosa and Changi.
Yes.
This is where urban planning basically transitions into narrative engineering.
Narrative engineering,
Okay.
exactly. Let's look at Sentosa. Today, Sentosa is the ultimate tropical escape. You have Resorts World, Universal Studios, luxury hotels, zip lining.
It's massive.
Down on Siloso Beach, people are drinking cocktails, listening to tropical house music and EDM. It's just pure leisure.
Yeah.
But prior to the 1970s, this was a British military base and a highly significant, honestly traumatic site during World War II.
It was. Do you know what its original Malay name, Pulau Belakang Mati, actually translates to?
I saw this in the notes and I couldn't believe it. It translates to the Island of Death.
Island of Death. That is the baseline they were working with.
The Island of Death. And now it's literally where you go to ride a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's insane. And Changi follows the exact same pattern. Today, Changi Airport is a global aviation masterpiece. Jewel Changi features the world's tallest indoor waterfall, the Rain Vortex.
It's stunning.
It's surrounded by this multi-story indoor forest and a butterfly garden. But historically, Changi was the site of a brutal World War II prisoner of war camp under Japanese occupation.
Yeah, Changi Prison.
The amount of trauma associated with that name is immense.
The juxtaposition is just staggering, really.
So how do you explain the psychology behind that, this form of, like, architectural alchemy? How do you take a POW camp and the Island of Death and transmute them into the planet's greatest symbols of hospitality and open gates?
It really comes down to reclaiming the narrative. If we connect this to the bigger picture, when a society leaves a site of immense trauma as just a ruin, it allows history to forever define that space by what was done to them.
Oh, that's a great point.
Singapore recognized that if they wanted to move forward, they couldn't just be a museum to their own suffering. By deliberately engineering a POW camp into this world-class global fusion space and turning an island marked by death into an engine of economic joy, Singapore asserts total control over its destiny.
Reclaiming the narrative.
Exactly. They're effectively telling the past, you do not dictate our landscape, we dictate our landscape.
Dictate the landscape. That's powerful. But, we've talked so much about the hardware so far, the buildings, the reclaimed land, the airports.
Right.
To really understand how this rapid reinvention functions on a daily basis, we have to look at the performers.
Yeah.
The software.
Yeah, the sensory and human experience of the city.
Exactly. We have to look at the people who bring this multicultural fusion to life every day. And the most accessible entry point to that, I think, is the food.
Oh, absolutely. Food is central to their identity.
You have high-end Michelin-starred dining, but the real heartbeat is in the street food hawker centers, which are literally UNESCO recognized.
Again, the hawker centers aren't just an organic accident, right?
Yeah.
They are a prime example of government engineering.
Right. They stepped in again.
Yeah. In the early days, street food vendors were largely unregulated, pretty unhygienic.
Yeah.
But the government didn't just ban them. They built dedicated, sanitized centers with plumbing and electricity, and they moved the vendors inside.
Oh, wow.
It was a highly calculated move to clean up the streets while preserving the culinary culture.
And what a culture it is. I mean, you have dishes that reflect all these intersecting histories. Chili crab, Hainanese chicken rice, satay skewers.
Oh, and laksa.
Yes,
Yeah.
laksa, which is this deeply complex, spicy coconut noodle soup. And you see this fusion visually and audibly, too. Like, the city's soundtrack is this vibrant mix of English pop, Mandopop, indie electronic beats.
Yeah. Championed by local artists, right? Like
Yeah.
J.J. Lin and Stephanie Sun.
Exactly. Plus, elements of global pop culture like the movie Crazy Rich Asians. And on the streets, you'll see traditional clothing, the Chinese cheongsam, the Mali Baju kurung, the Indian sari, and they just exist right alongside modern, breathable streetwear.
There's just a constant fluid dialogue between these different cultural lineages.
But the thing that actually makes this dialogue work, what I'd call the ultimate piece of cultural glue, is the language.
Oh, definitely.
Singapore has 4 official languages: English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil. But the language of the streets, the thing that binds everyone together, is Singlish.
Singlish is absolutely fascinating. For those unfamiliar, it is a localized, highly efficient slang that pulls vocabulary and grammar from all 4 official languages, plus various Chinese dialects like Hokkien and Teochew.
It is so efficient. Like, if you want to ask if something is possible, you don't say, "Excuse me, would it be possible to do this?" You just say, "can or not."
Can or not, yeah.
It cuts right to the chase.
It really trims the fat off the English language.
And it has so much character, too. You have words like shiok, which means something is amazing or intensely satisfying, usually used to describe a great meal.
Right.
You have la, which is just used at the end of a sentence for emphasis. Okay, la. And my personal favorite, the concept of choping.
Ah, yes. Choping a table. If we're looking for the quintessential Singaporean ritual, this is it.
Please explain how choping works for the listener, because it's brilliant.
Okay, so when you go to a crowded hawker center during the lunch rush, you need to secure a table before you go line up for your food.
Obviously.
To reserve a seat, a Singaporean will simply place a small, inexpensive item, most commonly just a little packet of tissue paper on the empty table.
Just a packet of tissues.
Yeah, and that packet of tissues is an unspoken, universally respected contract. Everyone in the hawker center acknowledges that the seat is now choped or reserved. No one will touch it.
A single packet of tissues holding down a table in a bustling metropolis. It's amazing. But, so what does this all mean for you listening?
Right.
Think about how difficult it is just to get 2 friends to agree on where to eat.
Good luck with that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So how does an entire society seamlessly blend 4 major cultures, multiple languages, diverse historical backgrounds, all on a tiny island without it just turning into chaos?
Well, if we go back to our operating system metaphor Singlish and the local food scene, they're the highly optimized code that makes the hardware run smoothly.
I like that.
Singapore is often mistakenly compared to a melting pot. But a melting pot implies that all the individual ingredients are melted down until they lose their distinct identities. Right. They become a homogeneous soup.
Right. Erasing the differences.
Exactly. But Singapore is more like an intricately designed mosaic. Every culture, every language, every architectural style retains its sharp edges and its distinct flavor.
Yeah.
But they are all tightly arranged to form a larger, unified picture. So it's not erasing differences. It is a strictly enforced order, absolutely. But within that framework of order, the system is highly functional, safe, and just undeniably shook.
Perfectly engineered fusion. It's order as a prerequisite for vibrancy.
Exactly.
So let's just step back and look at the whole picture we've mapped out today, because the takeaway here is huge. Singapore really is a masterclass in the power of a chosen identity.
They didn't just survive the 20th century.
No.
They actively designed the environment they wanted to inhabit.
Exactly. We've seen a society take a devastated post-war agricultural strip of spice plantations and engineer it into Orchard Road, a neon skyline of global luxury. We've seen them clean up a polluted trading river and pull the pristine Marina Bay financial district literally out of the open ocean.
And rewrite their history.
Right, overwriting sites of profound historical trauma, transforming islands of war into playgrounds of peace. And they hold it all together with this incredibly efficient, multicultural mosaic.
It's an incredible accomplishment.
It really is. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to consider on your own.
Yeah.
If a city-state can completely rewrite its physical, historical, and cultural identity in the span of just a few decades through sheer will and vision, what does that mean for you?
That's the real question.
The next time you feel stuck in your current environment or defined by your past, just ask yourself, what would it look like to reclaim your own narrative? What would it look like to build a completely new reality right on top of the old one?
It's something to think about.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Singapore. We appreciate you being here. And until next time, keep diving deep.